So we start with our good motivation, reminding ourselves, of course, we're here to learn more for ourselves about death, about dying, and also so we can maybe be of help to others. But in general, all the time, every day on this planet, tens of thousands of people die. So many millions of animals die. And not just in this planet, but life is endless. There are many, 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 many other worlds and planets. So we are thinking of life and death, this endless cycle of life and death, how we can escape it, how we can help each other who are still in it. And that's why we're receiving the Buddha's teachings. So we have a big mind, big mind, including everyone, especially those who are important in our lives, our parents, our children, our siblings, those who've hurt us, those who've helped us, very, very specially. And then we include everyone with as much love as we can imagine, and with such joy, because we have Dharma. Things come and go. Life circumstances come and go. Life itself comes and goes, physical life. People come and go. But our mind is with us forever. And Dharma is our best friend forever. This is wonderful. So very happy about this. Then we do our beginning prayers. Sonje chodam, soje chonam la, janjo bardo dane chasanje. Dagi jinso jipe sanam je, drola penchera sonje drupara sho. Semchen tamche dewa dang dewe jodang den para choche. Dongal je jodang shalwara choche. Dongal me pen dewa tampa dang. Men shalwara joche, Nyerin chadan ne tang shalwe, Tang yon chempola ne pare joreche. Deata shame shamawati shameta sha chomam kuri marazite karota ke ore. Tezo wadi olo yane beshudan male nalapan ye. Kukure kaka grasa no muki para muki amuki shametane sawa graha bandanane greta sawa pa pravadina vimukta marapasha satta pita buddha mudra anukatita sawa maributsarita parishude bega santu sawa marakama. Alden sawe lama rinpoche, dagye chewara pende den shola. Karin chempo kone jizonte, kuson tuje matrub sado sol. So, where are we? Where are we? We're considering dying in the sense of allowing this story of our life to come to its best end, as best it can, and preparing our journey into everything that will come in the future. Your story, my story, from this moment of death onwards. In the last 2 weeks, we've looked at, in general, the process, and then last week, how we are dealing with this life. We've seen we are using 5 powers according to the teachings of Atisha. There are those 5 powers. When we're alive, they sum up all of his mind training. And then those 5 powers we apply them very particularly at death. One of the powers, the only one we've really considered so far, is called sowing positive seeds. And it is by using what we have and who we are as positively as possible. So that we saw last week, let's not go back there too much, but of course, the obvious stuff, your wealth, your possessions, they're no use to you anymore. You're leaving this world. So how come in the brief time we have them still, how can we use them to the best? How can we practice generosity? Because whatever wealth we have, being generous with it, helping others with it, is the way that our own wealth really makes us rich. If you've got a lot of money in the bank and you're getting numbers through the post or online through a bank account, it's just numbers that you see. It's not wealth helping you. But if we use it to help others, it brings you good karma, and that helps you. But we saw that the main point last week, and the real essence of the Dharma way of dying, is that generosity at its heart means letting go what imprisons us. And we saw it's very necessary to let go in order to die as best we can. That meant letting go of stuff, and then our attachment to other human beings, to our life situation, to our fame, to who we are in public, who we are for our family, and letting go of our own life story, which we've been completely plumbed into. That's me, this story of everything we did, what happened to me and all of that. And that's finishing. That's finishing. You're like an actor that's moving out of a play. All of that play and the costumes and where it takes place and the action is finishing. And you're going to a brand new play somewhere else. So we saw that last week. And we saw that what is most helpful to us, depending on the time we've got left, is journaling, whereby we work our way systematically back through our life to the earliest memories we have, and then from there back to now. We're not trying to write down everything like you're writing a complex autobiography. We don't have time for that. We are looking at the things that happened to us that made us who we are. We're trying to face them as best as possible. And then as we saw, as we work back through the process, and even as we're working from now back to the earliest memories, but certainly when we make our journey back from the earliest memories year by year up to now, we are forgiving and asking forgiveness from those who hurt us, those we hurt. And then we are expressing our gratitude to all of those who helped us on our way, and our gratitude for being able to help others. So now, I don't want to go back there. We didn't finish with it. All of this course is just a brief look at what can we do that will be helpful. I'm sure not only could we spend a few sessions just on this journaling process, but also it will be so different for each of you because your lives are different. So if there was one-on-one time, then we would tailor that to suit your own situation. But anyway, the point is this. This course is called Dying as Best You Can. Dying as Best You Can. So the whole idea, just a moment. The whole idea of this process is not to sort your life out. You don't have time. Even though you're going back through your whole story, you're discovering it and you're getting some distance from it, some objectivity. Any of you who've done work with psychotherapy, with psychoanalysis, you'll know that even if you had another 20 years, you probably could just go deeper and deeper, and you might not sort everything out. That's not the point. We need to be very clear about this. At the beginning, I said you need to make a deadline. Like you've given yourself 2 months to do the journaling. And it's so that at the end you can say, enough. I can only give this much time to looking back at everything I was, everything that happens. More important now, much more important, is looking forward to where I'm going, what's happening next, and preparing for that. So I need to have done my best, but then I need to close that book. And we need to accept the fact that we won't have sorted anything out. Maybe this journaling has in fact opened new doors that you never knew you had. But we have to say, I did my best. That's good enough. We have to tell ourselves, I'm not going back there anymore when we come to the end of the time. I'm not going to just add another little bit or think about another little bit. And in our saying our goodbyes to our loved ones, if they come to visit and so on, and when they come and sort of mention, however they mention, things to do with your wealth and your will, or just advice, Mum, what shall I do with your roses? I don't know, love. I don't know, dear. That's your problem now. I don't want to know about roses anymore. Do your best. And everything like that, you're not going to allow yourself to be drawn into that past. The door is shut. Shut. And you need to make sure that you close it. Of course, there's always exceptions, but the point is we're doing as best we can. And the whole reason that we are doing the best we can in the time we can is so that we don't have unexpected attachments, worries, anxieties, concerns, pulling us back in the all-important process of leaving this life into where we're going next. So that's the first power, called sowing positive seeds. And I'd like to mention something that's very important in Dharma. Very important, but I think in this series of teachings, we don't have enough time to go into it a lot. And it's the second power. Now it's called the power of repudiation. It's a funny word. And I did have inquiries about, is that really the right word? Sorry, I'm just making some adjustments here. Is that the right word? And quite what does it mean? And you'll see, I think the best thing is I explain to you what it means, what we're doing, and then you find your own word for it. And I'd like to go through it quickly. I'm going to do this quickly, so please excuse me, but with a very, let's say, vivid and memorable example. And so I hope that helps. Repudiation. So you've been journaling your life all the way back to the earliest memories and back up to now. Thinking about specific situations, people, how their effect made you who you are. Going through a story. One thing we're doing at the same time, on the quiet, in the background, is observing the whole and seeing if we come to the same conclusion that Buddha and Atisha and Gampopa and all of our Karmapas and our present teachers have come to. Now, we're not trying to psych ourselves into something, to convince ourselves of something. We're looking as honestly as we can at our whole life to see, is what the Buddha says true? What we're looking for in all that story, which was in this country, with these people, with those people, when you were a kid, when you were, so different chapter by chapter. We're looking for one thing. Is there one thing in there that spoiled everything? That made the bad karma, that made me hurt other people, that made me waste my own precious life, that made me angry, that made me sad, that made me depressed, whatever it was. Is there one thing that's been the troublemaker all the time? And is there one thing that's really been my friend, kind of the opposite of that troublemaker? Up to you. But the Buddha's conclusion is this. It's what's called ego. It's when me, self-interest shut down our loving care, shut down our awareness of others, shut down our openness to spirituality, Christianity, Buddhism, Dharma, whatever it was, and something that was damaging. Me. And then what felt like really being alive. Is there something there? And according to the Buddha, this is love and compassion, when we're aware of being part of a whole. Doesn't mean we obliterate ourselves. It means we're not obsessively selfish, where everything is brought back to me, my story, my world, where other people are being used to make your world better. We're not really aware of them, who they are, their situation. So compassion opens the door, opens a window into other people's lives. And then we feel for them, we care for them, we want to help them. We start to feel our life as service, not service of ego, but service of the whole. We are part of a healthy whole. That's what we want to be. Like trees and plants in a forest, we want to be nourishing each other. So that's the good thing, the compassion, the service. And the troublemaker is me, ego, which just confines us. It's a prison. It feels like if you are looking after yourself, what they say, self first, that you should be better off for it. But in Dharma terms, in a spiritual sense, you're just the worse off for it. You put yourself in a terrible prison. So, like I say, you're not trying to psych yourself into that. Your story's over now. This was it. This was this life. You've done it. You've done it. So you're looking back with a view to what? You've got another life coming up, and maybe a couple of hundred lives after that. Do you want to do the same again? Do you want a me life? Or do you want a life of service, of love, of kindness and compassion that makes you open to Dharma, open to what the universe, what life, what Buddha nature has to give you? That's why we're looking at it. It's not a question of beating yourself up, saying, Ken, you've been an ego monster all your life, and this was terrible, and I'm going to die full of guilt, and you get out the whip and you start flagellating yourself. What a bad person I've been, full of ego. No, just matter of fact. Just matter of fact. That was your life, Ken. What was the trouble? What messed things up? What wasted all those years? What were you running after? And did it work? Did it work? And those moments when something so deep and joyful happened inside you, why was that? So repudiation means saying to ego, and this is the words of Atisha, right? It's a quote from the text. The days when you could get me are over. There's no kind of, yeah, I'm going to try a little bit harder next time round or anything. This is, you're in a position of absolute power. You've got nothing more to lose. This life's finished. You don't have to please those people. You don't have to get a job anymore. You don't have to do this or that. Ego's run out of fuel. And now you've got ego in a corner. You're on your way to something wonderful. We must believe this. We must go into what follows with strength, with wisdom, clarity, with a lot of love for ourselves and confidence. So with no doubt about it. Now, when I was a student, after I was a student, I was living in a pokey flat in London. And I used to love walking the streets at night. I used to love walking the streets and seeing all these little windows, each one probably a one-room, two-room flat with a whole world inside of people. It was just amazing. And once I witnessed a row where a woman was throwing her boyfriend out, and she literally threw his clothes and his suitcase and stuff out of the window. So I can't remember the exact words I heard, but the tone was something like this. Get out. No, shut up. I don't want to hear one more word from you. Out that door now. And at the same time, the stuff's going out the window. Don't write to me. Don't ever call me. No, I've had enough of your rubbish. Not one more bit. I don't want you in my life for one more moment. Out. It's kind of, ooh, it is. So this is how we think about selfishness, self-centeredness, this prison that wasted so much time in our life. Now I'm going to a future of goodness, closer to the truth of this universe, of everything. And the day is when you could get me over. So that's the power of repudiation. And we are doing that as in the journaling, we are coming back through our life up to now. We're keeping that in mind so that at the end, we have no doubts about where we're going. Now, we need to move on. But before we move on, all the way through each of these 5 powers, the journaling process, and now this power of repudiation, we are practicing Tonglen. So as you go back or forwards through your life and you come to, say, something painful, then as you are dealing with it and forgiving and asking for forgiveness, then you think of all the people going through something so much like this. Illness, divorce, war, whatever it was. And you think, if only through my mind work, my Dharma work, dealing with this, if only I could lighten their load with what I'm doing, so they feel less, they'll be less damaged as they die than they would have been. And if only as I breathe wisdom into myself of how to deal with this, how to free myself from it, all the attachment, all the ego association with me, I am, if only that could help them to get some brighter light of spirituality. And so as we go back and forwards through our life, all the various incidents, and then as we're dealing with them, beautiful things, the times that were blessing for us, we're sharing them with other people. And we take into us their lack of such opportunities. We try and give them with the out-breath and with white light their own external help to trigger their Dharma lives. So we do that. And now with the power of repudiation, rejection, repudiation, then we also, as we start to see it how, okay, we know this life because we're ending it, but in previous lives, it would have been the same. Me. Not good. Love, compassion, openness. Very good. So let's do 3 minutes now of Tonglen, whereby we are breathing into ourselves as dark smoke all your selfishness, all the me. And it goes deep, because it's not just selfishness with stuff. Maybe you don't have much stuff, but it also means how we get obsessed with our own story. Whatever it was, Ken the Dharma teacher, me the politician, me the winner, me the loser, doesn't matter. That story is ending. So we are breathing in ego as something dark and harmful. As soon as it reaches us, it can't survive. And we have the goodness of Buddha, of our Buddha nature inside us, pure light, pure wisdom. And as we breathe out from that wisdom, we breathe into ourselves the love and compassion we deserve. The love and compassion from now on until we die, through the in-between life stage and into the next life. So 3 minutes, and I hope you've been training in the Tonglen, because it will be, at the time of approaching death, really something very, very special. Breathe in ego and selfishness, the limited mind. Dissolve it into Buddha nature. And from the truth of who you are, your Buddha nature, breathe into yourself freedom, relaxation, kindness, love, compassion, a vision of a brighter future. Okay, thank you. So now, before we plunge into the next set of details, where are we? Let me see if I can share some of the master plan. No, yes, this one. Okay, so I think you've all got this plan of the 6 bardos. The first 3 in blue waking state, sleep, meditation. That's about our life up until now. And we've been reviewing that, as I mentioned. Now, where we're going on to are the remaining three bardos. The dying bardo, the dhammata bardo, and the becoming bardo. The first one of these, the dying bardo, is what happens at the end of life as the mind and body, inseparable pair, start falling apart. Like each of the six bardos, the quality of experience, the quality of consciousness is unique. What will happen in that time doesn't happen in waking state, doesn't happen in sleep, doesn't happen in deep meditation. It only happens as your physical life is coming to an end. And we'll look at that next. Once that's over, and you're not just technically dead in medical terms, but you're dead in Buddhist terms, and we'll see the difference in a moment, then there is a moment when, because your mind is released from the body, and because all of the harmful things we call the mind poisons, kleshas, have shut up for a while. They've shut up. They're asleep. You get a moment of total exposure to the truth, the absolute truth. Call it whatever you like, Buddha nature, God nature of mind, the nature of the universe, whatever it is, whatever that is, there is a moment of that. And at that time, a possibility of dissolving into that and of not being reborn anymore. So that's a very special time. We'll look at that. And then if you didn't dissolve into everything at that moment, then you'll carry on. And between life, the end of this life and the beginning of the next incarnation, there is the becoming bardo. Yeah, I think that's all we need to look at on this diagram, just to let you know where we are. You can see in the dying one, there are three sort of pinkish subsections. The first is the preparation for death itself. We've been looking at that, letting go things, people, one's own body and life story, purifying, forgiving, asking for forgiveness, and also vajrasattva practice. And then now we're moving on to intention and analysis. So the analysis I just mentioned is the repudiation of ego. Intention, we're coming to now. And then I'll explain briefly the dissolution of the elements that happen at the end of life. And then what are called the white, the red, and the black phases. This is the main content of today. So now let's come back to this. We've closed the door on this life up to now. Now we need to open the door as to what comes next. Of our 5 powers, now we are using 2 of them. One is called the power of intention. It's long-term. It's about all of your lives in the future, where you want to be going. And I think in the first talk, I shared the teaching where it says this time of end of life is like drawing a bow and aiming it. And where you aim it determines where the arrow goes. So now we are very concerned with aiming all our resources. What are your resources? It's all your positive karma. It's all your dharma, wisdom and knowledge, everything. All our positive resources are going into aiming the next life and the life after and the life after into what you would really want them to be, especially now that you've seen this repudiation, the problem of ego. Normal people might want to aim their next lives into worldly things, being more of a this, more of a that. If only I could be born in New Zealand, or whatever it is. Or if only I could do more sailing, or if in the next life I could become a doctor, if in the next life I could become a monk. It might be more like that. Here, the power of intention, long term, is bodhicitta. You have set your heart, or are setting your heart more and more on becoming Buddha, becoming a mind which is totally awakened for everybody's benefit. And you're going to do that by following the path of the 6 paramita, like all of the bodhisattvas of the past did. So that's the long-term intention. Whatever it takes, we need to read about it, make sure that we're signing up for something we understand. Sounds good, I want to become a Buddha, but you realize what it takes? Are you sure? Are you sure? For instance, it says, even if I need to spend 10,000 eons in hell to help one person, I'm happy to do it. But we're not quite ready for that. That's more like when you're a bit further along the bodhisattva path. But I'm quite sure if somebody said, would you prefer to be reborn in the Bahamas or 10,000 eons in hell just to help one person? No, I'll take the Bahamas this time. It's a lot, because what do you want to do? You want to make your mind strong and clear and perfect. You only do that by facing challenges. You'll only do that by dealing with all the rubbish you carry from past lives. It's a daunting, wonderful task. So we need to have understood that through the Bodhisattva teachings. But we realize there's just no choice. Otherwise, you're going to get born and die and waste so much time and hurt so much and hurt other people so much. It's horrible. So whatever it takes, you want to become pure and kind, nothing but love and wisdom, and so at peace with everyone and everything. So that's the power of intention, long-term orientation. And the second one is called the power of propelling intention. It's a bit of a tongue twister, the power of propelling intention. That's much shorter term. If we compare this, what's happening as you're dying, to being on a journey, the power of intention is knowing where you're going. All the different mountains, deserts, oceans you're going to have to cross to get there, the whole journey, setting your heart on it. The power of propelling intention is about what you're going to have to do tomorrow. Cross the whitewater rapids, or do this, do that. Spend 3 nights in a seedy hotel in a rotten town somewhere in this part of the journey. You wouldn't do it by choice, but that's the only way. You've got to wait 3 days to get the boat. I'm sorry, I'm thinking about my own travels. Staying in a really rotten hotel full of bugs crawling all over the walls, because the cheap boat to get me back to Istanbul was not for a couple of days. But anyway, those are just memories. What you're going to have to face in the next couple of days as best you can. So the power of propelling intention is about what's going to happen to you now as you die, in those different stages of the elements collapsing, and then the white, the red, and the black experiences, and then the in-between life hallucinations, how you're going to best prepare yourself to deal with them. So 2 powers, long-term, immediate term, the power of intention and the power of proportion that you're giving yourself now. For these stages, if you can, it's very helpful to set up a support. This depends on you, where you are, if you're at home, in a care home, in a hospital, if you have friends, family who are Buddhist, aren't Buddhist, you have to sort that out. Ideally, next to the place you spend a lot of time, maybe you're spending a lot of time in your favorite elderly person's armchair that's quite tall, so you can get up and get back into it easily. Maybe you're in bed. You set up a shrine. That shrine doesn't need to be complicated, but it needs to embody for you this hope, this intention of where you're going. It's there all the time. It's a reminder. In your quiet moments, your private moments, you can use it. You can make prayers. You can make aspirations. And make it what inspires you. If there are images of lamas, teachers, sometimes, one photo of your guru does more for you than all of the formal thangkas and statues, or whatever it is. Maybe it's not appropriate to set that up. Or maybe because you feel it's so sacred, you don't like it to be exposed to the comings and goings of people's energies. So you make something a bit more personal. Maybe you have a book or something you can open up, like a little shrine. You can make something quite ingenious. Or maybe just a book with images, with the prayers you're going to use, simple ones, but meaningful ones. And this will be keeping your attention focused on the propulsion, propelling intentions, and the long-term aspirations. Long-term aspirations. And it's because we're focusing on that we have shut the door to thinking about your stuff, your garden, people, relationships, what will they do? Will my son fight my daughter? All of that kind of thing. You've done your best. You've shut that door. Now you're only looking forward. This is ideal. So then let's deal now, because time rockets by, with the technicalities. Now, I've not got a picture to put on screen. I think I did maybe in the first session, but there is a book that explains the technicalities of dying that I'm going to go through briefly. That's really very, very good. It's by a wonderful Lama. He's called Dzogchen Phunlop Rinpoche. Somebody I knew, a very nice person, younger in my life. We have the same guru at the time, Khenpo Sotim Jamso, wonderful teacher. So this book is called Mind Beyond Death. Mind Beyond Death. It's a real treasure. So then what's going to happen to you tangibly, physically, but not just physically? What's going to happen to your mind as death comes? To understand this, we have to look very quickly at what you've been in your mind, in your life, what you've been. It's very, very well explained in the tantric teachings. They're wonderful. If ever, most people don't, but if ever you get the chance, or that's one bit of the tantric teachings, you won't get the chance unless you do a 3-year retreat. But there are texts that explain what happens in your inner chakras, energies, and so on, from the time of conception until the time of death. It's wonderful information. In Tibetan medicine, there's something simpler but similar. So what happens is that at the moment of conception, your consciousness from the past life joins up with your fertilized mother's ovum. And from that moment, this life starts. And from that moment, body and mind cannot be separated. Cannot be separated. It's not like there's mind doing this to body all the time. It's not like, they say, it's not like a white and a black thread twisted together. You cannot separate. body and mind when you look really closely. So what happens to your body, like brain damage, hormonal changes, food, environment, will affect your mind. And what your mind does will affect your body if we use that dualistic language. But the reality of it is not dualistic. To understand this, in Vajrayana teachings, we look at actually what happens at the moment of conception on a deeper level. And this is where we come to the 5 elements. They are incredibly profound. They are incredibly advanced science, considering the thousands of years ago they came from. They're very misunderstood in terms of their gross names. And there just isn't time. A weekend on the elements is an amazing mind opener. But let's go back, not to a Buddhist teaching tweaked because now we know about something about science. Let's go back to what the Buddha actually taught. It's about what's going on at the deepest level. It's like now, you're looking at a screen, you've got a body, maybe you've got a flower in the room. But we know from our science, we've got an idea that that order, the beautiful petals of the flower, and your face, and these things which are so seemingly fixed, you go down and down and down, you've got a total atomic chaos. You've got neutrons, protons, electrons. It's mad down there. It's got nothing to do with flowers and faces. It's just a total electronic soup, energetic soup. But the way that soup is working is making you, the flower, and this Zoom meeting possible. But if you go down to that level, as science does, you understand so much. You go down to the tiniest bit in physics with the CERN accelerator and things, you discover stuff about the whole universe around you. So in that atomic makeup of things, we have the 5 elements. The earth element is what appears as matter, particles. In the Buddha's teaching at the time, in Greek, there were the atomists. In India, there was the Buddha's teachings. They talked about the tiniest particles, and whatever was material in there was called the earth element. It expresses the quality of matter. Whatever holds the material components, the atoms and the particles, in relationship with each other, so that these ones are more joined, these ones are less joined. The magnetism, the gravity is called the water element, and it's defined in the ancient teachings as that. It's not water. It's nothing to do with water like we know it. It is what holds in relationship what is tangibly material, the water element. The energy that's in that relationship as matter is held together with matter, tightly, intensely, less intensely. The energy is the fire element, nothing to do with fire. It's the energy, and then that energy is either expressed energy like fire or latent energy like in wood and coal. And then that whole thing is in movement. Matter joined, bonding with matter, changing with the energy being released, the energy being held. The whole thing's in movement. This kinesis, kinetic quality, is the wind element. Those 4 elements are dynamic. They're changing all the time. All of them happen in the 5th element space, which doesn't change. So anyway, that's that. So when at first your consciousness from previous life joins with your fertilized mother's egg, then this story of your life happens. Now, the Buddhist theory is that whatever is the universe made of atoms with these 5 elements changing all the time, why there is the change, why the elements bond with each other, all the way up to making people, to making life circumstances, is through the power of karma. Karma is the engineering behind the movement of the material world. So what happens at that conception time, what will happen throughout our life is the 5 elements will give our story. Our perception of the outer world, our parents, our siblings, the circumstances, our perceptions of our inner world, our mind, this body that we have, that we live in. That amazing story. So we follow that through in the tantric teachings, through the periods of life while you're in the womb, the first 7, 8 years of life, the next ones, when you leave home and then other karma kicks in. And all the time, body and mind are inseparable. And all of the time, the 5 elements are at play. They never stop. What has happened through the power of karma that drives the 5 elements, that drives the atoms, is that in this life, you've had your story. It wasn't like anybody else's story. It wasn't like any of your past life stories. It's not like any of your future life stories. It was amazing. That whole story of experience, mind experience of the 5 elements is now coming to an end. We study this in detail in Vajrayana teachings, and we understand how Vajrayana practice purifies all of this. But now, today we're looking at what happens at the end. And why is the experience unique? Is because the 5 elements which have been working together are now going to collapse one after the other. How long it takes for each one, you can't say. It depends on each person, depends on the circumstances. The order, more or less, but it's not rigid. Each person's story is different. So, to put it very simply, he says, looking at the clock and taking a deep breath and wishing you good health with a swig of coffee. The story goes like this, right? Just now, every day, every year, the 5 elements non-stop working. But now, first, the earth element is going to end. It's like a battery coming to an end. No more life in it. That can happen quickly, it can happen slowly. So with each of the elements, when they come to an end, there is at first a rush, a surge of that element, and then afterwards a long disappearance of the element. So the earth element means at first there can be a surge, and so that means that you feel very heavy. You feel incredibly solid and heavy, but then after that surge, you feel weaker and weaker and weaker, and tiny things like even lifting a spoon can seem like such a huge task. You're paper thin. You don't have the energy anymore. Because your body is losing its energy, your muscles lose their control, the body can start leaking fluids. They can't be contained as they were automatically or with some effort during your life. Body and mind are inseparable. So as the earth element is collapsing, then your perceptions become less clear. This means the earth element, the actual matter of your senses, your eyes, your ears, and so on, is not functioning so well. You can feel heavy and dim. Now, there's another thing, you'll find it in Dzogchen Ponlup's book. We don't really have time here. So what happens externally is called outer, that you are weaker. People can see you're weaker. People can see you're starting to lose. You're incontinent, you're losing your fluids, and so on. There's the inner one where you feel your perceptions becoming heavy and dim, dull. And there's what are called secret signs for those who are meditators, who, if you catch them, you can sort of see which stage of the process you're at. They're in the book, but at that stage, it says things are everything that's happening seems so much more dreamlike, like it's like a mirage. You're there, you're sick in bed, whatever it is. And it's like you're dreaming it. So anyway, that dissolution or that collapse of the earth element is mainly related to your, you can't see it, your navel chakra. Your navel chakra. The power that's been held at your hara, navel chakra, starts to collapse. And it says the earth element collapses into the water element. It means it disappears. And so then with the water element coming to its end in your life, first there's a surge. Some people even hallucinate. It's like being under a tsunami or a wave. But then the main point, most of the time, is the water element power is lost. In particular, the eyes become very dry. The nose becomes very dry. These are the outer signs. The inner thing with your own mind is that there's now more confusion. You don't just feel dull. You can, I'm just double checking my notes. I should know all of this by heart, but it's easy to get things wrong. Don't want to. You are confused. What people are trying to tell you or say to you can make you feel confused. And because of that, you can get upset at them very easily. It's upsetting not to be with it anymore. And people can be irritating you. And then the inner sign, whereas at first when the earth elements collapsing, things feel like a dream, feel like a mirage. Now it says they're not so clear. It's more like you're losing connection with reality around you. And water element's connection. It's what holds things together. It's what held you together with other people. It's why getting rid of our attachment, even attachment to our own story, is very important, because it's going to collapse now. We don't want it to make us confused. So there's this feeling of, it's like fading away a bit. Now the water element is seated in the heart chakra. So this is a collapse of the power of the heart chakra as well. Then the next thing is the water element dissolves into what's called the fire element, that's seated in the throat chakra. So with the first surge, sometimes you can feel very hot. You feel like the room's very hot, your bedclothes are too hot. But that goes quite quickly, and then you start getting cold. And we see this with dying people. You start getting cold from the extremities, from the tips of your fingers, from the tips of your toes and ends of the limbs. They get cold first, and gradually the cold moves towards the center. So there is when our inside, now the inner experience, is that we can't get clear with our thoughts anymore. Fire element, part of its work in this throat center, is very much to do with understanding, clarity. You know what's going on. And we lose that clarity. We're not clear about what's going on. And because that animates our sense recognition, the part of the brain that recognizes people, then sometimes we don't recognize our friends. We don't recognize our relatives. We don't recognize where we are anymore. The inner sign, now that these three elements are collapsing, first two have collapsed, the third one, is that we start to get little moments, flashes of something else, where we're going. It's not just like this world that we've been so heavily plumbed into. That's become confused and not so clear, and there are flashes of something else. And then the throat fire element, it says, dissolves into the wind element. This is in what's called the secret center or the sacral center at the bottom of your torso. And so, well, there you stop breathing. When the wind elements come, the main point of the wind element is your breathing. So the breathing stops. Often there's the rasping breath before the breathing stops. The heart stops. The eyes start to roll upwards, and then in the end, they're completely revulsed. While this wind element is collapsing, then our mind is very vivid, can be very disorientated. And at this point, people can hallucinate a lot. And when we go into the Dharma text, it says people who've had a good life can have beautiful hallucinations. The elements have collapsed, your senses have collapsed, your mind is starting to get free. So all of the inner power of karma, an accumulated mind, can make it seem beautiful. I remember when my old mum was in hospital, she was in a ward with another lady who was near her end. It was a hospital ward in Onga. She thought she was in what for her was like paradise. I think once or twice in her life, she'd gone to a Butlins holiday camp. And she kept saying to my mum, I don't know how we're ever going to pay for this. And she saw the doctors and the nurses as so differently. She was having the time of her life. A kind person with a good heart. And my mum played the game very much. She used to give her some of her biscuits and things like this. And she was always so appreciative. Everything was like too much and so wonderful. And then people who've had evil, harmful lives, then that's when they start to see the people they've harmed coming in all sorts of forms and hurting them, and they're scared and they can hallucinate nightmares at that time. So those four elements collapse. The fifth element is not a changing element, it's the space element. It doesn't change. But what it means is that when the first four elements have collapsed into space, then this is really when this body-mind pair, this inseparable pair, is no longer a pair, and the body is going to die. You don't die, the body dies. You carry on. And that past life is far gone behind. And you will carry on into the bardo. So this dying bardo is mainly about the collapse of the elements. It's good that we know about it. So when it happens, it's not a shock. We've got whatever lucidity we can maintain. And it's just, oh yeah, you know, this is what happens. It's like when you're going for an anesthetic, they say, now, Mr. Holmes, we're going to give you an injection and count to 10, and you'll gradually lose your consciousness. And you know that you're never going to hear the 10, because by about 3 or 4, you'll already be gone. So you relax and you know it's going to happen. We can recognize it. We can accept it. And we can, if you can, be doing Tonglen for all of those people who are dying, who are troubled by what's going on, who are fighting it, who don't want to die, even though it's inevitable, who can't cope with their hallucinations. You're thinking, if only by being relaxed, by being centered, and just letting this happen. If only I could take some of the suffering of other people dying. If only through trusting the refuges, the bodhicitta, all of the blessings I've encountered, if only this wonderful feeling of what is forever, not just this dying body, if only I could share that with everybody else. This means that as your elements collapse, and whatever it is. You're losing your fluids, you're peeing the bed, you feel incredibly thirsty or heavy, and all of that's going on again and again. If only I could help at least one person or two or three. And then if I accept. So this brings us into many, many topics that can be helpful. And I've been thinking of them all week and so frustrated by the little time that we've got, really and truly. What can be helpful? Refuge at this time is so important. And not just in the outer Buddhist sense. It's in this huge, vast context of where you're going. What is this life? This mixture of this work of the elements that gives you body and mind experiences. What is it? And in all of that, some people have worked with everything they are, body and mind, and become so pure, like Buddha. And we take refuge in them because we're not alone. They've all done that. They're there. They're right next to you on your dying bed. You're going to join them. And all of those on the way to being Buddha, all of the bodhisattvas, like some of the great beings we've met, we're taking refuge in them. And what is taking refuge in them meaning? Is that there are truths behind this whole story of life and death that will always be the truth, however they're expressed in whatever language, by whatever religion. Those timeless truths we call Dharma, the way things are. So now we're entrusting ourselves to the goodness of Dharma. Such a powerful, powerful support. It's why we have the shrine. It's why we have our little book or whatever we've got. So as that process happens, in whichever order, whichever way it happens, then we are relaxing and accepting and going as much as we can into the refuge. And if you have meditation experience of holding a center, then you'll understand what death really means. Because I've used the analogy of a journey. In fact, we're going nowhere. It's not about geographical travel, popping out this body and going someplace. It's about your mind. Your mind, which all your life has been caught up in stuff. People, human situations that you had because of your karma. Your mind that's been worrying about this with your own health, with your own body, how to earn a living, to get the house and get the car you need, and all of those things. That mind which has been out there all the time, in this, in that, in him, in her. Now it's about this mind gathering inwards and having a possibility to find the beautiful core deep in the inside of the inside of the inside of everything you are, which is connected with everything in utter purity. So as the elements collapse, then this is what we're trying to do with our meditation, with our heart, with our mind, and very aware of Tonglen, sharing with others to help them, taking their own confusion to a place of inner purity. Now, also today, I've not got long, but I need to do 3 more things, right? If you go back to your bardo chart, you saw there was the collapse of the 5 elements. And then now we have 3 phases. Sometimes it seems these phases happen, 2 of them, that they're called white, red, black, easy, white, red, black. 2 of them can happen before you're clinically dead, while you're still breathing, while you've still got a brain wave. The last one, the black phase, is Buddhist definition of death. You can't come back from it. I don't have time to explain the theory behind them, but it's from the moment of conception, we have a tension between 2 energies, like around the earth. You know, we have the sun and the moon. Gravitationally, the moon goes from being opposite the sun to being conjunct with the sun. It gives us our tides. It gives us many repercussions in our bodies. So there's a tension between two elements from our father's genetics and our mother's genetics that are called the white and the red elements. They're very concerned with the way our brain and endocrine system functions, so it's placed at the top, and the way our supportive biology, the cardiovascular system mainly, functions. So as the five elements collapse, or perhaps after the five elements collapse, then these three phases start to happen. The first one is called the white phase. Now, this is interesting because people report back on this when their heart stopped, their breathing stopped, and they've been resuscitated after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, and they come back and they tell you how it was. So what happens is that since you were conceived unto the time of death, then these five elements working on body and mind through the power of your karma have given you a me and other experience, you and your parents, you in life, and there has been hostility, either expressed hostility as anger or frustration, or latent hostility that's been brought about by the rest. That hostility is based very much on your brain and your biology. So when your biology stops, there is a moment when you are free of your lifetime's inattention of anger and hostility and rejection, frustration, all of it. We have 33 different aspects of this hostility that shut up. And you feel wonderful. You feel wonderful because these inner tensions and aggressions and being at odds with this, that, him, her, they all stop. You feel so free. And at the same time, the center of your bodily energies, your chi, which is in your head, starts to sink down towards your heart center. So you have, it's called the white element. We work with it a lot in yoga. So the experience is one of going towards a white light, and all of your anger and hostility is gone. You feel like you're being received. So people report back on this from, when their heart stopped. They think they're going to heaven, but actually it's a biological experience of collapse. Some people have this while they're still clinically alive, and they can actually report it to people around them. Sometimes people die but are resuscitated, then they report it. In that stage, because your emotional history of all this life has shut up, starting to shut up, actually you're vague. We kind of function on desire and aggression and the other things. Once all that habit shuts up, you're kind of vaguely going into the light, you're letting go. It's like sunbathing. And it says the feel of the mind is like mists. Now, what happens after that is that from your lower centers that control, or your cardiovascular system, the whole energizing of the body through food and so on, that power that's been there all your life is also stopping, and with it, 40 aspects of desire and attachment and wanting and longing and dreaming and so on also shut up. All those hidden dreams and all the things you want that have been in the background, whether they're expressed or not, they stop. And there is a feeling, like a hallucination, if you want to call it that, of things now going red. You can get at that time some flashes of where you're going to be reborn next. It says it's like firefly light. It doesn't mean you actually see fireflies, but there are flashes like a brilliant firefly, and then you're vague, and then there's another flash. At this point, if somebody outside is wise enough to see what's going on, saying things in the dying person's ear is very, very helpful. What will give them faith? What will help them be calm? What will help them know that everything you're going to experience is simply your mind? It's just your mind, just like a dream is your mind. It's just your mind. Don't be afraid. Really help them say, there's nothing to be afraid of. It will pass. It's just your mind. Have faith in whatever they have faith in. If they're Buddhists, saying Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Dewari, the name of the Buddha, will be very, very helpful. A wonderful gift you can give the dying person. Now, up to that point, in Dharma terms, you're still alive. Even if your heart stopped, if your brainwave is flat, you're not breathing anymore, but you're not dead yet. The third phase is called the black phase, but there's no experience of black. Your consciousness actually totally stops for the first time since you were conceived. Even in the deepest sleep, it's still ticking along. But there it stops, total blackout. There you're dead. There you can't be brought back. You're dead. This life is definitely over. And at that point, your body will, your mind, even though it's unconscious, but its locus will be in your body for up to 3.5 days. Up to 3.5. It could be 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. They say rarely more than 3.5. And I think those of you familiar with corpses or who've been with the dying, there's a point when it's just nothing more than a block of waxy, dead flesh. There's nobody there anymore. But sometimes, until it's just a block of flesh and there's nobody there anymore, there's a lot of presence. And so maybe we need to come back to that next week. You know, in Buddhist countries, what you do during those 1, 2, 3 days is considered important. That's the time when you'd have people doing prayers surrounding the person with a very, very nice, conducive, peaceful energy. Okay, I need to stop there for today. I didn't cover as much as I wanted to, but you'll find the details in Ponok Rinpoche's book. So let's dedicate everything that was good to all our fellow beings, in particular to all of us here, all of you watching on YouTube, that when your time comes to die, that really, really it will be a blessed, blessed time. Sonam diye tamche zikvani, topne nyepe dranam pomchene, jega nachi palap trukpaye, sipe sole drowadro warisho, jancho semcho rinpoche, ma jepa nam jejurchi, jepa nyampa mepadam komne, komdo balwarisho. Okay, thank you very much.